Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rant Line Radio. We're going to grade USC's performance in their loss to Minnesota. I think we got to start in the easy spot, quarterback. Alicia, what do you got for Miller Moss?
I'm giving him a B+. I think he's doing a really good job of avoiding the pressure that is put on him, being very efficient on third downs. In this game, I dock him a little bit because USC needed him to be special, and in the end, he wasn't. And even though I don't necessarily put a ton on the 2 turnovers that he committed in this game for a variety of reasons, he still had a hand in 2 turnovers.
Right. Yeah, I think he was good with the task that was given to him. One of the turnovers, I think, is worse for him than the other, and that's the pick at the end of the game. And it's a throw that he probably shouldn't make into triple coverage, but also is a situation where it's a desperation moment where you've got to take a risk. So is it the worst pick that he's ever going to throw in his life? No. But in a game where you're right, SC needed, a miracle worker at quarterback, he wasn't the miracle worker. That's not a crime overall, but it B for me for Miller Moss. Let's go to the running backs. What do you got?
I'm giving a B. Woody Marks gets an A+. Quentin Joyner gets a D. So I'm splitting it into a B. Woody Marks is immense in every facet of the game. I can't speak highly enough of him. Mm-hmm. Quentin Joyner is such a good runner, but he can rip off a 10+ yard run every single down. Mm-hmm. And if he fumbles that easily, I'm giving him a D. That cannot happen.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm going to go A- here. I think the running backs were great on literally just about every play, with the exception of the fumble. The fumble's really bad. The fumble prevents potentially a scoring drive from the Trojans. They at least get it back on defense, a fumble a couple of minutes later, and they get a field goal for the half. But they could have got a touchdown on that drive, and that would have been huge. That would have been, more points to make the rest of the game easier and more manageable for them. But they didn't do it. But Marks had well over 100 yards. He looked great. His best game as a Trojan easily. And Joyner, outside of the fumble, was spectacular. All of his runs went for I think they all went for at least 6 yards. He was great. But again, that fumble is a limiting factor. A- though for me overall on the running backs. Let's go to the wide receivers. What do you got?
I'm giving them a C. USC's wide receivers have now dropped a critical third down pass in the first half of what feels like every single game. Mm-hmm. That can't keep happening. Yeah. It just can't. And Zachariah Branch should have been off to the races. That could have been a big play for him, and he blew it for him and his team, and it cost USC dearly in this game. And then Jacoby Lane, I want him to be a number 1 wide receiver for USC, but you can't just have 2 catches in a game and all of them coming in the first drive. Got to be more impactful. Yeah,
2 in the first three plays. You're right. I think the drop early in the first half, I think absolutely tanks the impression of the receivers in this game. They were given a tough task. Minnesota was playing 2 high safeties. They weren't giving them a lot of room to make plays downfield. Mekhi Lemon looked really good. He had a couple of really big plays on the last drive of the game. He had a third down pickup that was maybe got a helpful spot there, but set up a touchdown in the first half. He looked really good coming off of his injury they sustained against Michigan. But overall, the receivers just didn't make a lot of plays. And the ones that they could make, sometimes they didn't, like the drop by Zachariah Branch in the first half on that third down, which again, potentially cost SC points. Let's go to the tight ends. What do you got with the tight ends?
I'm going with feels like a harsh B+.
Okay.
I love what the tight ends are giving USC right now. Cade Eldridge has been awesome in replacing Lake McCree. Walker Lyons has done a hell of a job getting thrown in there as well. They were both really, really good in run blocking in this game, especially Eldridge. I'm docking them just a little bit because USC really is missing Lake McCree's presence in the passing game. Mm-hmm. Haven't really seen these guys be able to have that impact. And yeah, USC could have used that in this game.
I think that's fair. I'm going to give them an A strictly because I think we're grading on a curve here, right? Like, these are 2 tight ends that are inexperienced, and they are not, yes, SC could use Lake McCree in the passing game, but I don't think you look at this game and go, oh, the tight ends are a detriment to what SC is doing. No, you never have to really think about them, and that's because they're doing their job, especially in run blocking. And we'll get to the offensive line in a minute, but the run blocking was great in this game, in part because the tight ends helped out when they did. When they need to help out in the pass game, they do. They're not going to win the Mackey Award, but I think they're doing their job, especially as inexperienced freshmen. And for me, that's worthy of an A. They're doing what they're supposed to do. Let's go to the offensive line. This one will be interesting. What do you got?
Giving them a D+. I'm going to give them credit because they ran block about as well as they have all season.
Yeah.
They were much improved in pass protection for most of the game, particularly the third quarter and most of the first couple of drives of the second half. But in the end, USC loses this game because its tackles get beat on both ends. Mason Murphy and Elijah Page, they got beat in the worst possible moments, in the critical moments of the game for USC. And again, like Quentin Joyner, you can be stellar the whole way through. But if you make those errors and they cost your team the way that these errors cost USC, I can't give you better than a D+.
Yeah, I'm going to go C-, just a little bit ahead of you, not by much, obviously. I think that, what they did in the run blocking game was very good. Alani Noah had a great game, bounced back from the struggle that he had against Wisconsin. He was eaten alive against Wisconsin. He wasn't a problem at all. I think he gave up 0 pressures in this game. SC gave up 8, I think it was the 8 pressures all game long. That's considerably more than Minnesota gave up. And that's a problem, especially when the ones that you do give up are very, very, very bad. Yes, the offensive line probably played their best game collectively as a whole for the most part, but it still wasn't good enough. And when you lose because of the offensive line, because a couple of those turnovers or the drives get, affected by poor offensive line play, and that either takes points off the board or prevents you from, being able to say that you could get points on the board, that's a problem. SC needs to overcome that. So C- strictly because the run game was so good, and if not for the critical errors, I think that this would have been a good grade for them, but the critical errors were very bad and obviously tanked the grade considerably here. Let's get to the offensive line. The offensive coordinator, Lincoln Riley, who's also the head coach, but we're grading him as an OC here. What do you got?
I'm giving him a C+. I was really close to giving it a B because I think the play calling in this game was really balanced and effective. It was a really good mix of running and passing. Yeah. I thought he kept Minnesota on their toes the whole way through. I think there were a couple plays that maybe you could argue should have run or should have done something different, but I don't think any of his decisions were egregious. I think a lot of it is results-based sort of judgment. But I am knocking him down because it is his responsibility to have his offense ready to play and have his players focused enough to play well. And USC is being destroyed by critical errors on offense. And any Lincoln Riley team should never be held to 17 points in a game like this. If the offense shows up, you win. So Riley gets docked.
Yeah, even if there are fewer possessions, SC certainly had enough success in this game to warrant more than 17 points. Absolutely. I'm going to go B strictly because, and maybe this is a cop-out, but if you want to roast me in the comments, it's fine. I view this grade for the OC as more game plan than anything. The issues with USC's offense were the critical errors, the execution on those critical plays, and I think it is a coaching problem. You're right, when those critical errors continue to happen. If this was a one-off, it's not on the coaching staff. But the same issues happened against Wisconsin. SC had a lot of the similar issues against Michigan. This is a weekly occurrence that SC has critical errors that kill off drives, kill off opportunities to get points, and ultimately limit them to 17 points in a game when they probably should have scored 30+. They were 7 of 11 on third down, 7 of the first 9 on third down. That's because of a good game plan and good play calling and all that stuff, but it means nothing when you have all of those errors. And you're right. I think all those errors do become Lincoln Riley's problem when they continue to happen. So the B is mostly for the game plan, not necessarily the overall product there. Let's go to the defense. Start on the D line. What do you got there?
Defensive line, I'm giving a D. They gave up consistent yardage to Minnesota's rushing attack, and they also got practically no pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah.
The depth issues are clear, and I understand that, but the lack of impact plays from USC's edge rushers is killing this defense. It makes everything harder for everybody else at every level. I get that the interior has bad depth issues, but the edges don't. Right. They got to be giving more.
Yeah, Bear Alexander isn't there, but also Bear Alexander wasn't starting on this defense. So not having Bear Alexander is not an excuse for SC's lack of production. This was easily their worst game of the season for the defensive line. They've been susceptible to the run before, but they've tightened up as the game has gone on. There was no tightening here. They were consistently gashed up front. The runs consistently got to the second level. So I have to agree. I think it's a D for me for the defensive line. And yeah, Devin Tompkins gets the sack, but no other quarterback hurries registered by the D line. That's not good enough. I think that you need them to be more productive, particularly the ends in Lucas and Muhammad. Let's go to the linebackers right behind them. What do you got there?
Giving them a B-. Find them hard to evaluate in this one because they really do miss Eric Gentry. But I think there's a lot to like about what you're getting from Easton Mascarenas-Arnold and Mason Cobb, especially in the positive sense. Mm-hmm. On the other side, they were responsible for a couple of those chunk runs, not more than a handful of those chunk runs that Minnesota got. And that just can't be happening still in practically every game.
Yeah, I'm going to go B. I think you're right that like EMA was good. EMA and Cobb combined for 25 tackles. That's a crap ton of tackles. And part of that is because the run kept getting through the D line. And for the most part, the linebackers were great at not letting the run get past the second level. They didn't give up the big 40-yard runs that they gave up against Michigan, but they consistently gave up 8, 9, 10 yards, which allowed them to get a lot of tackles, but it could have been much better for them. They were a big reason why Minnesota was only 2 of 8 on third down. And missing Gentry absolutely is a big factor, and I think the linebackers were the best part of USC's defense, which is a good thing for them, but yeah, absolutely could have been better too. Let's go to the secondary and start with the corners. What do you get there?
Giving them a B- as well. I think Jalen Smith and most of the corners continue to play very well. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, in this game, they didn't make the impact play that might have changed things for this defense. Yeah. And Jalen Smith got hit with that pass interference. So it's a tough eval. It's a tough situation for that group. But again, I'm looking for somebody to step up and make the big play. And unfortunately, they were just okay.
Yeah, I think just okay is the key here. It gets me a C. Jalen Smith has the pass interception, the pass interference, and I think that's probably a play that doesn't get called in a lot of the Big Ten games because the refs let them play, but it's absolutely a Pac-12 pass interference. He held it, like the arms were there, the hands were there. By the book, it's PI, even if you wish that it was more lenient. And I think it's not a great thing that was sort of the, everlasting impression of the corners in this game was that play. They didn't have a big challenge because Minnesota wasn't going to, want to throw the ball a ton. But in the Michigan game, Michigan didn't throw the ball a ton, but every time they did, the corners were draped all over the receivers. You did not see that in this game, even though when they were challenged. So for me, it was a C. They were mostly not a non-factor on defense. Let's go to the safeties. What do you got there?
Giving him a B+, mainly because Kamari Ramsey actually made the impact play that the defense needed. He forced a fumble, and that's what USC needs Kamari Ramsey to do, and he continues to come up big with those kinds of plays. I also think Akili Arnold did well in his return.
Yeah.
I don't know that this was a particularly standout game otherwise for the safeties, but again, somebody got a fumble, so I'm giving him a plus.
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite of the corners, right? Like, I think the safeties and the corners weren't a ginormous factor in this game, but the safeties made the big play that was memorable in Kamari Ramsey's forced fumble. I'm going to give a B. Maybe not the plus, but Kamari Ramsey only had one tackle in this game. That's not great. You'd like him to be a little bit more proactive, especially when the runs are getting to the second and third level. You'd like him to maybe be a little bit more around the ball there. But that's probably a nitpick. Akili Arnold looked really good in his return, which is a good thing. Also, Kamari Ramsey produced USC's only quarterback hurry of the game that wasn't the Devin Tompkins sack. Why is your safety the only one that's registering that play? But I think it goes to further underscore that when Kamari Ramsey has an impact, it's a havoc play, which this defense is lacking havoc plays, and it's good that somebody's making those. Let's go to the defensive coordinator, which of course is D'Anton Lynn. Alicia, what do you got for D'Anton?
I'm giving him a generous B. I'm still impressed generally with the improvements of this USC defense. And they did hold Minnesota to 10 points through 3 quarters. I think they continue to be frustrating in the chunk plays that they give up at the start of drives, but they also get stops a lot of the time. Unfortunately, you can hold teams to any number of points in the first 3 quarters, but if you're giving up 14 in the fourth, I'm going to hold it against you. That can't happen.
Yeah, I'm going C+ here. I don't know that the game plan was terrible, but it also wasn't something that was nearly as successful as the offensive game plan, which consistently moved yards, but failed with key mistakes. The defense, Lynn brought pressure when he needed to, but the pressure didn't exactly get home. I think it's a benefit to D'Anton Lynn that he was good on third downs, calling good defenses on third downs. Again, Minnesota was only 2 of 8 in third downs, and that's a big reason why some of their drives failed. But they got fourth down conversions, which kept those drives going alive too. But for me, the biggest knock on D'Anton Lynn is it's a drawback of his original success early on in the season. It's that there were no second half adjustments in terms of, there wasn't a tightening in the second half where the defense just decided they just weren't going to give anything up again. We saw that again in just about every other game except for this one, because in this one, the fourth quarter goes awry for the defense. It was, on the one hand, you're not going to blame the defense for this loss because it was the critical errors on offense that cost SC points and cost SC the chance to kill off the game. But the defense could have prevented that from being an issue if they would have gotten their stops too in the fourth quarter. That's going to wrap up our grades. We'll be back later in the week to preview USC and Penn State coming up at the Coliseum Saturday, 12:30 on CBS. We're going to preview the game Wednesday, 4 p.m. Pacific time with our game preview. We'll be back later in the week for a video on USC's key to victory over Penn State and what their path will be. And they will win if what happens. We'll talk about that then. Until then, click on this video right there. You see it? I think you want to click on it. I think you probably want to like it too. So make sure you're subscribed, click on that, and we'll see you next time. See ya.
See ya.